when you think of Greenland, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Ice, right? Just this massive, endless sheet of white. But here's the thing. Beneath all that ice, there's this incredible story. A story of survival, of a deep mystery, and a really determined journey towards self-rule.
I mean, we're talking about a land of total extremes. It's this huge island, and almost all of it is buried under a colossal sheet of ice. You'd think nobody could live there, right? And yet, people have called this place home for over 4,000 years. That's just wild.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How did they do it? How did they build a nation on this icy frontier? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. We're going to look at the waves of people who first settled the land. We'll investigate a mystery that's centuries old, and we'll follow the path that led to the Greenland of today. All right, let's get into it. Okay, first things first. We really need to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the challenge here. This isn't just, a cold place. It's an environment that literally dictates every single aspect of life. Get this. A staggering 80% of Greenland is covered in ice. 80%! So what does that mean? It means for thousands of years, all human activity, I'm talking all the hunting, every settlement, all of life itself, had to be squeezed into these tiny, narrow, rocky strips of land along the coast. So the human story in Greenland kicks off way back, around 2500 BCE. You have these waves of people coming over from North America. But it wasn't like they arrived and just stayed. It was more of a cycle, really. A group would arrive, they'd figure out how to live there, and then, sometimes, they'd just vanish. Gone. Only to be followed by another wave of migrants starting all over again. All right, let's jump forward a few thousand years. Because now we get to a really pivotal moment in the story, where two completely different groups of people show up. And their arrival is going to set the stage for everything that comes next. So on one hand, you've got Norse explorers coming from Iceland in the 9th century. They sail west, they find this land, and they set up settlements. Then, a few centuries later, around the year 1200, a totally different group arrives, the ancestors of today's Inuit people, migrating from northern Canada. So you have two separate peoples from two different continents, basically meeting at the edge of the world. It's pretty incredible. But then, something strange happens. One of those groups just disappears. This becomes one of the great historical mysteries of the Arctic. The Norse, who had been there for centuries, farming, building communities, they just vanished. Completely. And this contrast is really the key to the whole mystery. You see, the climate started to change. It got colder, the Little Ice Age. The Norse settlers, with their European-style farms, well, they struggled, big time. And eventually, they were gone. But the Inuit? Their whole lifestyle was nomadic. Perfectly tuned for hunting seals and whales in the harsh Arctic. They didn't just survive, they actually thrived. So why? Why did one group vanish while the other survived? It really all comes down to one word: adaptation. The Inuit had this deep, specialized knowledge of the Arctic ecosystem. That was their secret weapon, their key to survival. And because of it, they became the sole inhabitants of this massive island for centuries. Okay, so for hundreds of years, it's just the Inuit in Greenland. But Europe hadn't forgotten about this place, not at all. And the stage was being set for a whole new chapter, a new arrival. And this time, it was all based on a massive misunderstanding. Okay, so here's what happened. In 1721, Denmark-Norway sends a missionary expedition. They were completely convinced that the old Norse settlements had survived. The whole point of the mission was to find these lost Viking descendants and bring them back to Christianity. But when they got there, no Norse at all, just the Inuit. So what do? They pivot. They change the mission on the fly and start baptizing the Inuit instead. And that decision, born from a complete historical mistake, ended up being the foothold for Danish colonization. And with that new presence, things changed fast. Denmark-Norway set up trading colonies and imposed a really strict trade monopoly. And look, this wasn't just about business. This fundamentally reshaped Greenland's entire society and its economy. It tied the island's fate directly to Denmark for the next 200 years.
But of course, that's not where the story ends. Far from it. Let's jump ahead to the 20th century, because this is where we see the beginnings of a modern Greenlandic identity and a real push for more control over their own destiny.
Now, this journey wasn't overnight, but it was decisive. In 1953, the big first step. Greenland goes from being a colony to being a county of Denmark. Then a huge leap forward in 1979 when they get home rule. That gave them control over their own domestic stuff. And this march towards self-determination was so strong that, get this, in 1985, Greenlanders actually voted to leave what was then the European Economic Community, choosing to go their own way, even separate from Denmark on that issue. And that really brings us to where they are today in this very unique position. So what does home rule actually mean? Well, it means Greenland governs itself on most internal things. We're talking education, the environment, all that. But foreign policy and defense, that's still handled by the Danish realm. It's this really fascinating, kind of delicate balance between independence and partnership. So when you think about it, from those very first hunters who crossed the ice, to the Inuit who absolutely mastered Arctic survival, to the modern nation it is today, navigating complex global politics, Greenland's story has always been about one thing: adaptation. But now, as the ice itself is starting to change, the biggest question is no longer just about survival. It's about what kind of future this nation will choose to build on the warming rock that's emerging from beneath.